morning, everyone, here in the pavilion and on Zoom. Welcome, Chief McCulley. Welcome, Commander Larson, and Sergeant Vaughn will be joining us shortly. Councilman DeGolia, good to see you. And the previous president of A.D.A.P.T, Scott Barnum, joins us here today in the pavilion. I would also like to introduce Rebecca Grant, who's on the board, Judy Massey, John Mosby, myself, outgoing president, and Tom Owen, who probably is driving the M-Star at the moment. Today is our December community meeting. Today we're going to cover hygiene, which is individual health, sanitation, which is group health. We're going to talk about critter remediation and security. Today ends a 25-year emergency response journey for me that started in 1997 with, in fact, Robin McClish at Stanford. It also ends a 7-year journey here at A.D.A.P.T. The legacy that Robert Jenkins created in 1999 that was passed on to Scott, who founded A.D.A.P.T. actually in 2012 by incorporating it, passed on to me, and then will now go to the board going forward. And I am privileged and honored to spend my last day with all of you. So thank you. So we were founded in 1999. Scott Barnum, who was by Bob Jenkins, then he passed it on to Scott, who incorporated A.D.A.P.T. in 2012. A.D.A.P.T. is an organization dedicated to creating a prepared, resilient, response-capable, and recovery-able organization for its community. It's civilian-based. It is sponsored and in partnership with our Atherton Police Department and funded by the Town Council. It's completely volunteer-based. Our website is getreadyatherton.org. It has a fantastic reservoir of information and guidance for all of you at a personal level, neighborhood level, and even on a community level. At this time, Chief, would you give the Chief's update?
Morning, everybody. Good morning. Bittersweet day for Tom, but we've got some great plans. We have plans for a great lunch at 12:30, and then you're all welcome to join us for the ribbon cutting over the new building at 1 p.m. this afternoon. It's probably our biggest update. We went from 7,000 square feet to 17,000 square feet for the police department. This has been in the works for over 20 years, I'm told. So I hope you can join us. It's really proud for us to walk around and give tours and show you our new home. Another big update, we have a couple members in the room. We rolled out our resident volunteer patrol program. Tom's a member, Susan's a member, Mary Lou's a member. We have a total of 6. We started small, and I thought we would probably get some adapters, and we're still going to try to recruit. The idea of the program is to be more eyes and ears for us as a way to deter and prevent crime. Get that out in the media that our folks are walking around. They're wearing vests. They've had training from us of what to do and more importantly, what not to do. And so it's just one more thing, one more trick in the bag that we're trying to do to get these burglars and others to go elsewhere. So with that, again, welcome this morning. Excited about lunch and hoping to see you over the new building at 1 p.m. today.
I believe the lunch is at 11:30, right?
11:30. Thank you, Steve. 11:30. And
then I really do encourage you after that, our hour and a half of having some very good food. Sponsored by the police department, by the way. By the way, are you the barbecue chef, Chief?
Yes.
Okay.
Lynn's been up all night cooking.
Say again?
Lynn's been up all night cooking.
All right, thank you.
Medium rare.
And then, so this is kind of a great day because we're having a nice little barbecue. And it's not just a going away party for me, it's a celebration of all of us. We have accomplished an enormous amount this year, and I will detail that at the barbecue. But when you see what we have accomplished this year, it's been a 7-year growth process. And thanks to Scott, who laid the foundation that handed over to me, all of us created this, along with Town Council, George Rodriguez, the Town manager, Robert Lavadia, who is the public works director, all of us, we've made this happen. So this is really a celebration of all of us. Remember, my motto is reduce death, minimize injury, bring calm into chaos, and then celebrate the barbecue. Yes, ma'am.
We have a few people on Zoom asking if you can hold the mic a little bit.
A little closer, I will, thank you.
And they also are having a hard time seeing the slides. Is there any way to move it closer?
I don't think so, because the minimum focus distance for the.
Okay. All right,
We'll do our best.
we'll do our best.
So today's presentation is hygiene, sanitation, critter remediation, and security. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, and then we'll have some good eats after that. So we have the next slide, please.
I don't know if the people who are viewing have the speaker view. That might be stupid.
Okay. Also, there is a handout at the back, just in case you didn't get one, and I will send it to the folks on Zoom.
Are there any local updates from our area coordinators? There you have an update. Okey-doke. That's our presentation today. Next slide, please. So after a disaster, we're going to be in a dirty environment. It's going to be chaotic. The air is not going to be clean. Resources are going to be compromised and or not available. There's going to be debris. By day 3, there's going to be bacteria. There's going to be the potential for contamination. Number one issue is, will you have clean water? Always number one on our list to take care of is area coordinator, followed by first aid, then shelter, and then food. So right away, we're going to have a water issue. And as you know, the county has just come out with, as well as the state, with new water regulations. We're already in a water crisis. So if you're not storing water, please start doing so. Start thinking about how you're going to keep food safe. And you're going to have limited access to medical treatment, which is why our most recent first aid class, with its really intense certification process, was really valuable. And the 2 classes we have during the year for individual first aid and group first aid, followed by the drill where you get to practice how to keep a medical environment free from infection and bacteria, because once that happens, you have contagion. It's going to be the number one thing you have to be aware of starting literally day 1. So by day 3, you have to be able to stop contamination and contagion. We're going to talk about that. Talk about how to stay healthy and disease free. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to sit down, and then Aiden is going to flip through the charts. Maybe just, you'll see what I'm matching. As I said, in a disaster, day 1, you're going to be very, very busy. You're going to be dealing with observing, orienting, deciding, and acting. You're going to be creating an organization, a communications network. You're going to send out reconnaissance teams. You're going to be doing immediate triage and transport and treatment. You're going to try to then start settling people into areas, whether they're at the E.A.P. or in their homes. And people from homes are going to be coming to your E.A.P. So you're going to have that organized. They're going to have the issue of elder, handicapped, children, pets, all kinds of things. When resources are disrupted as badly as they're going to be in a large-scale disaster, and you read all the after-action reports of all the major earthquakes around the world, communicable disease and contagion are the issue by day 3. Sometimes they really show up by day 2. And they're categorized in 4 areas. Infections due to contaminated food and water, respiratory infections from stress, changing weather conditions, and various other sources of contamination from debris fields. Critter and insect-borne disease, and infections due to wounds and injuries. So good hygiene, infection control, and critter remediation are the best ways to prevent infection and disease. So on a personal level, it is very critical to maintain good health. So in your bug out bag, you should have not only your medications, but you should have your vitamins. You should maybe have some emergency ENERD-C, which is a powder that has vitamin C and the minerals and nutrients that you can pour in your water. You want to have a boost oxygen because the air is going to be dirty and you want to be able to clean out your lungs. You're going to want in advance be thinking about how are you going to do field bathing. How are you going to keep yourself clean? What is it? In the old days, it's called a sponge bath. How are you going to do sponge bath in the field? Are you going to keep your hands and nails clean? Nail care is important. Interestingly enough, in disasters, nails start getting splintered, they start getting rough. Believe it or not, you want to have a nail file, just a little small nail file. Because if you have nails that in fact start breaking off, they can create infection as well as infect yourself or other people. Hair care, dental hygiene is very important. So, dental floss and toothbrush. Now, if you don't have water, what do you use to brush your teeth? Water, but you use toothpaste to spit it out. You don't have toothpaste, what would you use?
Vodka.
Use any alcohol, okay?
Baking soda?
You can use, but you don't have water, so you may not want to use raw baking soda in your mouth. That's a little too costly. You can use a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, or you just just use your saliva. Right. So you start thinking about those things in advance. Take the best case and work to the worst case and have provision, which means that you want to have in your water supply, you have not only have to think about hydration, food, but you have to think about hygiene and medical use and appolations. Appolations is keeping yourself clean. How do you keep your clothes clean? Do you wash clothes? Can you wash clothes? May not be able to. If you had a water resource, how would you create a manual washing machine? Does anybody have an old scrub board? Washboard. Do you know how to make one? Actually, pretty easy to make one. It's corrugated plastic washboard. So you start thinking about things. You start thinking the way our pioneers did when they didn't have all the resources we have. What's adequate nutrition? What would you say is the minimum nutrition requirement for you in a stressed environment in terms of calories? Well, they've done studies on it. The minimum is 2,000, primarily which is a lot less than what we eat. But because of the stress levels and whatnot, you want to figure out how you're going to maintain 2,000 calories per day if you can. Now, obviously, if you don't have it, then you can work on 1,000. I have 72,000 calories already built in here, so I'm in pretty good shape. And by the way, you will in fact use up any additional fat resources you have. Wound care is going to become incredibly important. Making sure that if you have a wound, including your family has a wound or an injury, or you're working with medically, how do you keep these wounds clean so you don't have rapid progression from yellow to red to black? By the way, what is the most common, or what is a common, or excuse me, what is an uncommon way to sterilize the room that you can find in your kitchen that you would not think of? Yes, you can do vinegar. Believe it or not, it's sugar. Sugar will absorb fungus, bacteria, and it's used in combat. Matter of fact, in Afghanistan, Sudan, Vietnam, Iraq, wherever we have, those of us in the military that we carry packets of sugar mix. Put it in there, you pack it, and then you lavage it every 6 hours, and it'll keep little things like that. Start familiarizing yourself with those things in your kitchen that you might be able to use. It is important to have in your bug out bag the medication regimen that you need, and then know what happens when it runs out, because it will. Now, that is your responsibility as an area coordinator to manage your own medication, but then you have to be aware of it for everybody around you. What happens when their medication regimen? So you want to know early on in that first 24-hour period, what are the conditions people have for which they're taking medication so that you can anticipate what's going to happen 48 hours after they're off. Usually the average reaction to off meds starts with an hour 25. The body will have enough reserve in it for about 24 hours, but it's going to be that 25th hour you have to start thinking about what happens when people are off their meds. So the key is keeping your personal space cleaned up and maintained, your home space cleaned up and maintained, which essentially will be in your backyard, because with aftershocks, you will not be entering your house. And then your neighborhood area. Cleanliness is going to be critical to your survivability. And then mask usage or air quality. Because not only is the air going to be dirty, but it's going to have contaminants in it, most likely from fires, which would include, anyone want to tell me what might be in that smoke? Ash, plastic, aluminum, mercury, etc., etc., etc. All the components, especially the electronic components, start to decompose, that you want to be aware of. In terms of family health, again, contamination is going to be very, very important to manage. Contamination, we'll talk about what that means, leads to dysentery, fever, malaise, and other health compromises. One of the primary sources of contamination is, in fact, decomposing food, decomposing human waste. So how do you handle waste? Food and waste. So instead of me telling you, like some of you, to offer me a suggestion, you're in your backyard, because you've had a 7.3, your home is going to be unstable, you'll have 4 major aftershocks within approximately 5 minutes to 20 minutes after the major quake, all of which will be fairly major. Then you're going to have ripples. You've heard about the storms that we've been having in Oregon and whatnot. So we've been having storms close by. So you're going to be in your backyard. So how are you going to dispose of? It's very critical. That's why it's number 1 on the list. How do you dispose of waste? Volume.
I would dig a hole.
Okay. Dig a hole.
3 feet deep.
Say that again, Wally.
Dig a hole 3 feet deep.
3 feet deep. And you may want to, by the way, you may want to make it a trench. A way to do it too. That way you can stack it. Now, those of you who have portable hygiene kits, those toilets that have the bags in them, and it goes into the bag. Where does the bag go? You want to put it in your recycling container? No. Remember, folks, we're on 3 to 10 days. Having it in a recycling container actually is not a secure place, especially if you have critters. or you have aftershocks when it knocks it over. That's a good thought, though. However, barriers. You can always go back after it's over. Disaster has been, cleaned up, and then dig it out and then dispose of it correctly. But you should bury everything, not only to prevent disease, but for what other reason? Critters. Critters will get into that, they will become contaminated, and all you need to do is rub up against a critter who's been contaminated or get bit. Now you have a real problem. So again, Elizabeth? Oh, okay. Yeah, where are you going to bury it? That's what it does. That's why you have to figure out in advance where to bury this stuff. If you live in a condo complex or whatever, it's not, just go out to your backyard and dig a hole. You have to think about this stuff in advance. Infection control, in terms of immediate first aid response, we've had a lot of conversation in our community meetings about how to do personal first aid, family first aid, group first aid. Do as much first aid as you can as quickly as possible after that reconnaissance. Treat it quickly. Sterilize the wounds as best you can, stabilize the wounds, and realize that, and Dr. Barbara Kostick and Dr. Jamilian will tell you, when we're doing it, you're working initially with the wound, thinking 3 days minimum. Right at the outset, think long term. As I said, air quality is going to be compromised, so wear a mask. Clean water. A bad water source will give you diarrhea, dehydration, fever, and malaise, which means boiling water, filtering water, water purification tablets, or one of these cool little things, which is what I recommend, a Life Clean water bottle water that has 500, will filter the equivalent of about 500 gallons. Put it in your swimming pool or whatever. Now, some of you, I understand, have filtration systems, portable filtration systems that you can put to your pool. Equivalent to this, except it's bigger. For those of you who have that, you can hook up your filtration system and they run off of a pneumatic pumping. It's actually a bigger filter than this. You can pump it out of your. Any questions about that? Think ahead. How are you going to preserve water? How are you going to take water that may or may not be tainted and make it clear? And are you storing water? And how much water should you store? By the way, how much water should you store? As an AC, as an area coordinator, you're going to have to lead people.
Gallon per person per day.
1 gallon per person per day, which is in fact going to be changed to 2 gallons per person per day, probably sometime next year. But they found out that 1 gallon per person per day, given the fact that the average usage in Athens is 22.9 gallons per day per person. The average. Well, I understand, but my point is, the average person uses more than 1 gallon per person per day. Because remember, that's hydration, food, appollutions, and medical.
What's the shelf life of stored water?
A long time. 5 years. If it's completely enclosed, it's 5 years even without putting the water doesn't contaminate. It is contamination introduced into water. Water on itself is not. So think about that. That requires some planning. Food contamination. Again, the dysentery and health conditions. How are you going to prevent spoilage? You have a way to keep your freezers going. Remember, all you have to do, the freezer will stay frozen for 48 hours if you don't open it too much. Refrigerator 24 hours. A 2-hour run of your a typical generator will keep a freezer active for about 28 hours. You don't have to run too much of the generator to keep the freezers frozen. But don't have a generator. how are you going to distribute the food out? Obviously, take it out of your refrigerator first, then your freezer. But then how are you going to preserve food so you don't end up spoiling it? If you have a large freezer, let's say someone is not entertaining in a large freezer, you're going to have a large amount of food spoiling. You have to talk about it. That food spoiling becomes contamination. Any questions about that? By the way, how do you what's the best way to preserve food? What method is that? Huh? Yes.
What?
Smoke it. Smoke it, cook it. And I mean cook it to very, 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 very well done. Dehydrate it. Now, if you have a dehydrator, what's it called? Dehydration unit. Some people have dehydration units in their cats, so they can take the food out and dehydrate it as they're going along and dry it out. And they have the solar units that work pretty well. So be thinking about that. The next thing that's important after we take care of the contamination issue is the fatigue prevention. By hour 8, you're going to start feeling fatigue as an AC. The adrenaline is going to carry you for 8 hours. So what are you going to do? Are you hydrating? You have 5-hour energy drinks. You have emergency. You have snack bars. Are you eating as you're going along? But the stress of observing, orienting, deciding, and acting for yourself and others is going to take its toll. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of realizing that emergency response is in fact not a sprint but a marathon. You try to rest, you're not going to be able to sleep. Those of us who've been in combat situations, and those of us who've been in other stress scenarios, I've been in foreign countries, try to go down and take a nap. That's going to be the most difficult thing for you to do, leaders, is go lay down, even if you can't sleep, just try to rest. The last one is the traumatic stress response. Now, most of you are, because of the way you're wired, the way we are wired in A.D.A.P.T, your stress response is going to be those events. Probably going to keep it together, but not everybody's going to. So TSR is going to happen, and you have to, one, notice it in your own space, but also be aware of it around you. How are you going to manage that? Now, ironically enough, in an earthquake, what is the number one thing that causes traumatic stress response? And adults, children, and pets. Again?
Lack of water.
Lack of water and aftershocks. After the 13th aftershock, it's going to be, 4.2. Even you are going to go, wow, because the ground, which is where it normally used to be stable, is no longer stable. An earthquake's a totally different animal. It's not like a hurricane, or it's a tornado or a typhoon or a cyclone. You have to be thinking about this in advance. The other cause of stress and fatigue is multiple traumatic encounters. That's why it's important for you to delegate. You're not always the one. Yes, you're the tip of the spear in an organization. You can't be the tip of the spear in handling every traumatic situation or every emergency. And then you will ultimately lead. You will lead from the front. That's what A.D.A.P.T used to do. And you have to spread out and counter with chaos. Keep your environment clean, hand sanitizer, and water spray bottles. Alcohol, water, food. Low hydration, low blood sugar, contamination, communication breakdown. First thing that causes communication between leaders and followers to break down. You only hear half of it, which is why we do what in A.D.A.P.T. We don't overcome that.
Take hydration first.
3 times. You give every instruction 3 times. That's hydration or low blood sugar, that they're going to be able to catch it. What's the other neat thing to have when you're delegating to? Exactly. So not only do you tell them 3 times, they have to repeat it back to you. That guarantees that when you go out, at least they go out in the field, they have, at least you know they have starting communication. There's performance degradation. So God willing, everyone has a good heart, everyone has good intention, but with low hydration and low blood sugar, you may come up short. Why, when people come back, that, what did you do? What did you find out? After action, even within every activity is important, just in case they weren't able to perform where they need to be. And then obviously communicable disease vulnerability. Who's the most important person in A.D.A.P.T? Yourself. Everything has to be protect yourself first. You cannot lead unless you're thinking about yourself first and your family second, which means gloves, mask, and eye protection. Yeah, remember this dirty air, if it gets in your eyes, they want to have eye wash, creates serious irritation and contamination. Nutrition and hydration for yourself, and rest even when you don't want to. So you have to decide in your group what's going to be your rotation. Let's say you decide 12 hours. First of all, your adrenaline is going to take you through 12 hours, so you might as well make it a 12-hour cycle. Somebody's going to tell you, Barbara, I'm stand down, go to the tent, lay down. Barbara would probably be like me. I'm not tired, I can still do it. You have to have your second, be strong enough to say, Tom, Barbara, go to the tent. Even if you can't sleep, even if you can't rest, then at least lay down after that your body is able to recover and rest. Because they're coming in the next 12 hours, and you have to be able to pick up where others are supposed to do. Now, as far as group, any questions about that? Let's just, you and your family kind of. The neighborhood is just nothing more than one step up. It's everything I just told you, but on a larger scale. First of all, you have to set up a A.D.A.P.T or IC. You have an IC. If you have a trailer at your house, you have an IC. Otherwise, it's an A.D.A.P.T. Let's want to make sure it's in a protected space, which means in advance, you have to decide with your neighbors where's going to be the best place if you're on your block. Execute and your shelter. Now, sheltering may be typically a different location. Again, contamination, dysentery, fever, malaise, disease, health compromise, group waste management. So how are you as a group going to take care of waste management? Let's say you have 10 or 12, 13, 14 people out in the street camping out. Okay. What does that mean? That means someone's going to have to volunteer to have their front yard torn up, and a big trench put in so that you can bury a large amount of waste. So think about that in advance. Yes, ma'am.
A question on the chat. If you don't have a yard, would you ever want to put your waste somewhere in the condo or whatever before you can bring it outside, or do you bring it outside immediately?
Now, that's a great question. If you have no place to put it, then you have to find the most secure place to put it, primarily for critters. And weather. If you get hot and cold weather, it degrades bags, the bags bust open, which means you have to have a container or maybe you have a dumpster, in which case will be you put it in a dumpster, you make sure it's covered, knowing that those bags in there are going to probably bust open. Okay, which means know that in advance. So those are things you think of. Key is security. In the backyard, that security is in the ground. Otherwise, it's a dumpster. You're going to have to get creative if you don't have a dumpster. Anybody have an idea? don't, if you go to Costco and get one of those plastic containers, maybe use that. Again, you're gonna have to take a look at your own environment and work that out. So large scale waste management, how do you maintain large scale water? How are you gonna do that? That's probably gonna require you using your pool resources, your backyard pools, and then having a lot of these, each person having one of these so that you can have a container of water every day. Or some other resources. Some of you have reverse osmosis, filtration units that you put into your pool. But think about with your neighbors how you collect your resources. Maybe if you have a 50-gallon drum in your backyard, you can get the water out. Well, I'd say that going forward, if you're getting 50-gallon drums, make sure you have the spigot at the bottom. I would have got 50-gallon drums a long time ago, far away, then I have to hand pump. That's not effective, especially in disaster. You want to get water out quickly, bring a hand pump top. So take the time to purchase the spigot at the bottom, place it on some kind of stove so that it's high enough so you can plug it in. Spoilage prevention. So in an earthquake, what's the fastest way to keep food from spoiling? Okay, keep the refuses going if you can. Smoking, which means everybody puts your barbecues out and you start barbecuing as much as you can. And it's going to be, well done. So quite a long period of time. You can keep your freezers going and you do it as long as you can until the propane runs out. Otherwise, you're going to cook everything so that you can preserve it. You also need to get
long shelf life.
obviously canned goods, MRE. So in my largest, I have obviously the freezer, and then I have my priority is canned goods, MREs, followed by freeze dried. And I use the barbecue. I have a field, then I have a field stove.
Okay, probably hold it up to the.
And I have the field stove also. You can cook your beans right on the barbecue, all that kind of thing. Again, when you are preparing food, make sure it's thoroughly cooked. I already just talked about waste management. The waste needs to be as far away from your sheltering and your E.A.P. as possible. Big hole, and what you do is you just keep covering it up, covering it up, covering it up. In the old days, what was the application before you covered it up? Lime. Yeah, it helped to break it down, but it also kept critters away. You just cover it up. So you just do that. I like this. You could do the method that Wally's talking about. If you dig 3-foot holes and you fill them up, cover them up into another 3-foot hole. It's entirely up to you and how your neighborhood wishes to do that. Keeping water clean is very important. Again, boiling water, filtering water, little tablets. Now we have a group example.
Wait, you still feel this, I think it's important to know how far down, when do we start filling it up? Should we allow 12 inches, 18 inches, when you fill that hole so that critters don't get to it?
My recommendation would be the following. Every iteration of putting something in is covered up.
Understood, but when do we stop using that hole?
Oh,
Can you repeat the question?
so at what point do you stop filling a hole? Let's say you have a 3-foot hole. Okay. Wally, what would you recommend?
I wouldn't go any more than 2 feet up, or have a foot on top.
I concur. 1 foot, because it's even at 6 inches, an animal will pick up the smell and start digging it out. So about a foot. So you're getting 2. So if you have a 3-foot by, let's say, 2-foot hole, you're getting 2/3 of it. So you think about that in advance. It means that you're digging holes well in advance of your ability, of your timing to put stuff in it. So you know.
That's why the trench works very well.
I like the trench. Air quality again. Now, group fatigue. How do you know someone is, their performance is starting to be compromised? That stress, low blood sugar, or low hydration is affecting their ability to communicate. What are the indications of that? Again?
Speak.
They have difficulty speaking. They start to speak and then they stop. Start to speak. And that, by the way, that's an indication of what two conditions? Hydration and low blood sugar. What are the indications in terms of speech that it has to do with stress or TSR, traumatic stress response? Can't maintain the thought, or they have modulation, goes high, low, but all of a sudden it goes really high or it goes really low. Can't maintain the thought, or there is an emotional staccato in between. Say again? Erratic. It's erratic. In which case, let's say you're the area coordinator and they're one of your block coordinators. What do you do? You know, you're observing, you're orienting, and you're deciding in your actions. What do you do? Ask questions. But you've already seen that erratic behavior. So what do?
Don't know if it's low blood sugar or hydration. So
Take them offline, hydrate them, rest them, and you figure out in a very, very passive, effective, because you're the leader, and caring manner that they need to take a rest. Now, each of you has your own style of how you do that, and you must do that. That is not optional. A person that's starting to falter as a leader, that doesn't mean they're not good leaders. Doesn't mean they're not capable. Doesn't mean they're not a valuable asset. They need to be taken offline for at least an hour so you get them hydrated, low blood sugar, and then reassess. It's going to take about that time for all an emergency, water, food. Very, very important, because if your chain of command starts to falter here, then everything will go to hell in a handbasket, and I mean in a hurry. Then you have the human being is such that they see their leadership is not capable. Guess what individuals will do? It will go Lone Ranger on you. Your ability to keep a cohesive organization safe and sustainable is very, very challenging. Infection control in a group is still so critical. Immediate first aid, wound sterilization, bacteria prevention. We know that we're not going to stop progression from yellow to red to blue to black. Because we're on our own for 3 to 10 days, and there are no doctors. There's not enough doctors here in Athens to make a difference. You have to have the understanding that your goal is to delay that progression as much as possible until professionals get there. So keep that in mind. Do everything you can to delay the progression of yellow, which is delayed, right? Delayed response. The red, which is immediate. The blue, which is they're going to die and there's nothing to do about it, but you're going to give them compassionate care. We created the blue tarp. The only organization that actually has a blue tarp, that's not FEMA. That's when somebody has a crush victim, and you know that after 28 hours, crush victims are more likely going to die than not, even if you got them to the hospital. We have a mechanism to care for them, and obviously lack of support. So think about that again as you're organizing your neighborhood, and have people involved in making those decisions and figuring that all out. A great, believe it or not, amazing source of contamination is anyway, because the body's off-gassing. When it off-gasses contamination of all kinds. It's that the deceased individual is vulnerable to predators, critters, all kinds of issues, which means that if you don't have body bags in your A.D.A.P.T caches, then what do you use as body bags for protection, effective protection? It's not going to be foolproof, but it's better than nothing. What would that be? Garbage bag, 55-gallon garbage bags, and you would triple them up. And you do 3 from head to waist, and 3 from foot to waist, and then you overlap them, and then how do you seal them?
Duct tape.
Duct tape. And you duct tape the top, duct tape the bottom, duct tape the front. And you put them in the bodies of your deceased neighbors in a respectful, compassionate way, in as cool an area as you can find it. And you always have somebody who's in fact watching it. Again, take care of yourself first.
John?
Yes.
Pandemic situation today.
Yes.
Probably not pandemic, let's say something happens tomorrow. Are there any additional precautions other than masking and whatnot that we need to take that pandemic is already in the way? Or any additional risks that
Enough, we are doing everything you can possibly do in the pandemic. Gloves, masks, cleanliness. Those of you who have ivermectin or hydrochloroquine, which are effective prophylactics for it. Either ivermectin or hydrochloroquine, if you have that as a prophylactic or a treatment. Most people don't. If you do, that works. Other than that, you're using the care that you would in a disaster. Let's put it this way, the dirty air is COVID. And you're going to be in dirty air for at least 3 days until everything settles down after. So consider that dirty air the COVID contaminant. And whatever you're going to do for COVID, you're going to do doubly to protect yourself, your eyes, your mouth, your nose, even your hands from the contaminated air. So you would just use what the nice thing about COVID is that we've been practicing some very strong, PPE protocols in our daily lives. So I don't think we'd do much more. Dr. Barbara, Dr. Paul, do you have any comments on that? Anything extra? Wear masks. Immunizations, vaccines, but also your nutrition. In other words, a strong body repels contagion. This is why you as leaders have to be really cognizant not only of checking with yourself and your own strength, but watching your leaders, especially those in the medical unit. And say that again, Paul. Okay, and N95 a week. If you have the little greenies once a day.
So get into that in the summer or something, that week or a week.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun to quickly just say after a week, watch it, try it.
And we can watch it, try it, leave it in the sun. The next thing in maintaining a safe environment is morale. It's how the organization responds. You want focused activity. You want to have a disaster area operations that is ongoing where people are actually engaged. And that means everyone age of 9 up. Those are the children, in other words, if they have the ability to, if the child is 9 years old and doesn't have the ability, don't use them. The child has the ability to take directives and do simple tasks, get everyone involved. It prevents depression and anxiety. Keeping your area clean and sanitized is a lot of work. Engage people doing that. Have diverse activities, including meetings and updates, planning meetings. Have a time where everybody gets together and does reflection. Have a time of day at the beginning and the end of the day where everyone comes together and has a little time to select themselves. Also, if you're a leader, then you can evaluate where people are at each of those moments. Games, educational activities, create support for specialized care, which we covered last session, child care, elder care, disabled care, and care, manage medication, what types of no? Okay. Oh, good. Perfect. That is great. Medication management, I think, is not given enough recognition in that if a person does not have their meds with them, go bag, they can go for about a day, sometimes 2 days, depending on how much it's doing for the body, before the absence of that medication is going to affect their ability to communicate and execute activity. And by the end of hour 12 in a disaster, you've already taken care of, already done 2 reconnaissances for sure, probably sent out 2 transport triage teams to make sure you got everybody in. You've already done some light search and rescue, you've probably done some fire suppression, and you're setting up shelter operations at that point, about hour 12. Start finding out who's on what drugs if they don't have it, and or medications, and how much supply they have, so that you can anticipate when they go off their meds. Okay. So what are the signs of people off their meds? Based on the African community. Now you all know each other, we all know our age groups and our likes and dislikes and what kind of medications we're taking. What are some of the indicators that people are off their meds and it's adversely affecting them? They can't cope. Swings in emotion and mood.
Blood sugar starts getting off.
Blood sugars go off.
Erratic behavior.
Erratic behavior, communication, as Barbara talked about. All of a sudden, in the middle of a sentence, they'll drop off and they'll reconnect. Now, what do you do about it? Go outside and start getting some more information. And you give them a buddy or a section where they can, a reflection area where they can be with at least 2 people, not one, to oversee them. In other words, we talk about elder care, and A.D.A.P.T care, and child care, and pet care in group setting. You may have to create a group setting for those folks who are having trouble dealing with their medication. Right? Think about that in advance. Now, do you share drugs? Okay. Who makes that decision?
Medical team.
Medical team. And then who enforces that decision? The area coordinator or the IC? If you have a medical team, you consult first, you think it all the way through, because sharing medications is very, very dangerous. Why? Dosage. So, again, as an AC, you have to be thinking about that. If you have somebody who's a medical person, you run it through, and then whatever decision you make, you hold fast. Do not change. Once you make the decision, you can never change that decision. Why? Because you keep reversing decisions, guess what happens when you see your followers? People will fall down. They get confused and they don't touch your leadership. Once you lose your leadership, you lost your community, and then everyone says, I know what's best for me, and they start going like that. That the Lone Ranger effect will destroy your ability to respond.
But the point is that in your go back, have 2 weeks for hands. Not
Yes.
just, 3 to 5 days like we used to. And then the other thing is, you talk to the medical team about maybe if it's gonna last 3 weeks before you can help her out. We talked about tapering some of the hands.
That last part again is very important. Stand up so that everybody can hear you.
Tapering some of the medications, depending on what they are and what your condition is. And some meds have longer half-lives than others. So all of these things you have to take into consideration. And then what needs to be done.
So if you are an AC and does not have a medical team, then you have to think about this. This has to be part of your checklist. Finding out who's on what beds, how much do they have, and then figure out a tapering regimen so that they can last 10 days. Because the last thing you need is having a fair number of your people who you count on all of a sudden being off their meds, and now they're another issue. Okay? So you think about those things in advance. Yes, sir.
So how do you go about getting a 2-week supply extra for your?
I'll tell you how we do that. I do that all the time, is when they tell you, are you on the elevator or do you go down and pick it up?
Most of them.
Yeah, so when you have the ability to reorder it, you order it. That's all, because they have to give that to you 2 weeks before you need it, so over time, I mean, I've got an extra bottle of each man.
Okay, so that everyone in this,
Or you're making.
Full week out of it, and then when that runs down.
Well, I didn't even do that, I just write out my calendar. I always ask you, what's the earliest I can call it? And then
Talk about putting a separate split of that medication.
But, well, that, you see, what I do though first is I start picking up my meds. Then, when the latest med I got, I put it in the go.
It's an easier way to do it. I don't.
It was actually.
Have options, because here's where you can fail, or you can like hospital or whatever. And you take your meds too. You also have an option to get one of your meds. Now we get extra bottle that you can hold on to. Like, you can get 3 months of like.
yes, so there are ways there are strategies. I use the Barbara Caustic strategy where, I just build up, 5 pills at a time until I end up with enough that is going to last me for 2 weeks.
Yeah, Optimum told me when I called in, right at the time my kids called in, they said, well, are you getting out of pills? And I said, yeah. And it's well, most people, forget to take their pills once, forget to take their pills a couple of days. Do that. Money because I forget to take my pills. I don't think so. So, just have to put it on your phone. Right, and then use the most recent pills in your go bag and swap them
So
out.
the order comes through, cycle the ones that you go ahead.
Right on my bottle, it's here.
So this is an important topic for you as an AC, an area coordinator, or a neighborhood leader. First, work out in your own space and then be aware of people. And encourage people to, in fact, build up a supply of essential medicines and medications so that if it does come to 10 days, that you're prepared. Who's an AC? This is very important. As an area coordinator, the most important thing is to keep your leadership intact, keep people intact so you have continuity of leadership. If that continuity is broken, your E.A.P. will collapse. individuals will do what they think is best for them, which may be best for them, but not necessarily best for the group. We all will fall back to what is best for us and our family. It's a good thing, but in a group setting, it is not. So what do you do about critters? I call it critter remediation. This is four-legged intruders. They are a source of contagion and contamination and infection. So here in Atherton, we have the potential for bobcats, coyotes, foxes, and in a very, well, actually not so extreme up in area 14, 15 mountain lions. Those would be something out of Stanford. So those are that level of critter. The next level down would be possums, raccoons, skunks, squirrels, rats, and mice, and the runaway gerbil. And then feral dogs and cats. Even your pet can go feral in a disaster, especially an earthquake where it completely disrupts their relationship to the physical ground and to you, and they can go feral on you. So you have to be aware of that. So what are the remediation resources for that? Sound can keep them away. Noise keeps them away, and activity keeps them away. So you want people to be doing things, and that will keep the critters away. 3,000 lumen flashlight, which will not only night blind adults, but also night blind animals. Bullhorn, 202 decibels. Make sure you put it away. And as I told you before, when we did this drill at Stanford and used bullhorns too, we're not allowed to put fire alarms. To start our drills at Stanford, we had to evacuate 9 buildings. So we used bullhorns to do it. And a construction worker, I told him to stop. I was about to do a countdown, and he ignored me. And I fired this off, and it was where Scott is sitting, and it knocked him down. Didn't even know that, so I now know it's slingshots, master blasters. I don't even know what a master blaster is. Yeah, it's a big water gun. You get a big 5, and you go to Cardenas over in Palo Alto, and they have that habanero sauce, and you put it in there with a little water, and it sprays, and it's concentrated spray for 20 feet. Now, not do it to your neighbor. Well, not to your neighbor. Make sure that you are downwind, right? You don't want the wind blowing into you. Because
You don't want to be downwind, you want to be upwind.
I mean upwind, excuse me, upwind. You want to be upwind to it. Okay, so you get yourself oriented to the animal upwind. Bear spray, pepper spray, wasp spray, fire extinguishers, the legal laser, the illegal laser. What's a legal laser? What's a legal laser? What color are they? What's an illegal laser?
Aren't greens illegal?
Huh?
Aren't greens illegal?
Commander? Sergeant?
We can find out, I don't know if there's,
I believe green, well, Steve,
What?
as far as the legal laser is green and the illegal is red, is that correct? Use green for the pointers?
I don't know.
Okay.
they're all legal, assuming that we use them on the board, use them on the airplane, or on the bike, or on the.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
he said it's exactly correct.
he's exactly correct, which means that you're going to illegally use a laser on a critter, okay?
It's not a person.
Fire extinguisher, and then the other remediation is keep your waste control underground, keep your areas clean, and you can use ammonia bleach as lay down ammonia or bleach, create barriers. Okay. Last but not least is security and non-lethal disaster defense. two-legged intruders. Again, 2,000 flashlight, temporary night blindness in the daytime, so you have a strobe on it. These are non-lethal methods. Horn, air spray, wasp spray, pepper spray, fire extinguisher. These are really cool. It's a really powerful chemical called Cool Fire. Should have one in your, definitely should have one in your go bag. Because you can lay down literally a path in front of you to get out of the building. That's what it's good for, getting out of the car, getting out, laying down a pathway to get out of the building.
What is that called again?
It's called Cool Fire. This will allow you to get out of a burning situation like through a window or a door or whatever. Again, it's a clockwise method. It's like extreme. For two-legged critters with on your property, a stun gun, taser baton, or taser, 18-inch zip ties in case you have to secure individuals, illumination. People who wish to do bad things hate illumination and they hate group activity. They see there's groups in illumination, they tend to stay away. Strength in numbers. And this is FBI profiling again. Bad folks. So the situation here in Appleton, what are our predators doing? They're going where there's no people, but the elimination is low. Or it doesn't look like people are paying attention. Okay. High visibility show of organized activity. You're doing that, folks. Remember, that's safe, but it's absolutely true. We're product of human nature. Bad folks tend to do bad things in bad situations. Good folks tend to do bad things in bad situations to be able to justify it. So like family, not the food, like part of our survival. It's not a bad thing. You have to be aware of it. So protect yourselves, illumination, group activity, look like you're organized, act like you know what you're doing, show strong leadership, have the abilities. By the way, I was sitting with the chief earlier about remediation for critters. Okay. Again, lasers cannot be used against human beings, whether green or red. So don't use that. Do it against animals, but not against humans. Trouble with that. Unless they are in fact physically attacking you. That's a question, and it's a legal question that will be outside my jurisdiction. We're talking about BB guns and pellet guns, which are great for critters when it allows you to have some distance, still have accuracy, and eliminate the problem. In San Mateo County and in Atherton, you can own a pellet gun and you can own a BB gun, and it's illegal to fire it. So it's kind of an interesting quirk, you know, in the Atherton ordinance as well as San Mateo County. An effective means to deal with critters, not for human beings. Humans don't work, but the law says you can buy them. So I go down to Big Five and buy a pellet gun, but I can't use it. So keep away from that. Learn how to use it. Right, Chief?
Yes.
So I wanted to make that clear for those of you who have, you know, what was it, the Red Ryder?
Yes.
Those of you who have Red Ryder pellet guns, the BB guns, yeah, it's a great idea, but can't do it. Any questions about critter remediation, the four-legged kind, or self-defense, the two-legged kind? Any questions in general about keeping yourself healthy, safe, and sensitive? This is the last module of the year. I'm very proud to be able to share it with you. All of our training, as you know, from the very beginning starts with the individual, works all the way up to group activity, and then we practice it with the drill. Then the last two of the year, we do specialized care and monitoring. So, questions, please.
That flashlight you were just showing, is that on Amazon? Is that an
That's an
Amazon?
Amazon. That's an Amazon.
What's it called again?
Oh, this one's called Fennec.
This first card is 3,000 lumens.
if I shine this through the daylight on this road, and it would definitely disorient you. All blinded persons would give temporary blinding.
Shine it on that wall, so it's not any less.
No, I'm not, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I don't want to take a chance. I did that once before and accidentally. So, not going to do that.
Tom, I have a radio message for you.
Radio, okay. Thank you for all of your hours of dedication and your tireless efforts. You have led by example and showed many how it is, or how it is done. 73. Thank you very much. And this is from immediate from General Message ICS 213. Thank you. Something brand new. We're now going to be using bank paper and communication paper that is triplicate carbonless, so that we have the ability to keep the original, pass the yellow on to whoever we have to pass it on to, and be able to pass on to pink if we have to. So, right. I know, even in disasters, but this is a neat way because it's carbonless. And this way, you know, the originator keeps it and still has the ability to communicate with two other folks. Any questions about what we talked about today? Did that kind of fill in some things? We have handouts. It's on the website. And as I said, I'm ending 25 years of 18 years with Stanford and 7 years with A.D.A.P.T. and Menlo Park Third. It's just been my honor and privilege to share this last day with you. It's been my passion and my love. You are truly my family. Thank you very much.
On our council meeting on Wednesday night, we have an official proclamation to present to Tom for his efforts here. But for today, I just wanted to come and say, I was energized, truly energized, the first time you stood before council and presented your vision for A.D.A.P.T. so many years ago. Your passion for all things pertaining to disaster preparedness just oozed out of your pores, and it lit a desire in all of us who listened, and it was contagious, and it still is to all of us. His passion for everything having to do with disaster preparedness. So Tom, on behalf of the entire town of Atherton and the city council of the town of Atherton, and as its mayor, for a few more days, I wish to commend you on your role in the organization, the leadership, the strategy, the planning and coordination of all of the mock disaster drills, which has taken place in Atherton's preparedness, and it has taken Atherton's preparedness and its residents to a higher level. The town will be forever grateful to you, and we now wish you happiness and health in your retirement from your role in Atherton's A.D.A.P.T. organization. Thank you so very, very much.
And since we're going to do it on Zoom, and I can't give it to him, I think the chief will give it to you before you leave today. So
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you and the council, city manager, public works director, our police department, from the town of Atherton. Their support of what we're doing, then our response to that support is why we have created this step that I have the honor of passing on to the board going forward. We have, Bob Jenkins, Scott Bonner, myself, now pass it on to the next generation. You all get to be part of that next generation of taking it to the next level. Thank you all.